All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're looking at one of the biggest, most mind-bogglingly ambitious engineering projects ever conceived by humankind. We're talking about India's plan to link its major rivers. Now, on one hand, it's being sold as this incredible cure for the country's water crisis. But on the other, well, a lot of people are saying it could be an absolute catastrophe.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get into the grand plan itself. Then, we'll talk about the massive ecological price tag and the very real human cost. After that, we'll look at a pretty scary crack that's already showing up in the system. And finally, we'll explore a totally different way to think about this whole water problem.
Okay, first up, the Grand Water Plan. You know, to really get what all the fuss is about, you have to wrap your head around just how massive and frankly audacious this National River Linking Project, or NRLP, really is. I mean, we are talking about nation building on a level that's almost hard to imagine. So, what's the core problem they're trying to solve here? Well, it all comes down to a crazy geographic mismatch. You've got parts of India getting absolutely hammered by floods year after year, while other regions are stuck in these brutal, crippling droughts. And the projections? They're pretty grim. They show this whole situation getting much, much worse, with the demand for water just skyrocketing past what's available.
And this is the proposed solution. It's basically an attempt to replumb the entire subcontinent. Think about that for a second. This table you're seeing here, this is just a tiny snapshot. There are 29 of these massive canals planned, designed to physically move unimaginable amounts of water from what they call surplus rivers to deficit ones, sometimes across hundreds and hundreds of miles. And to put this into perspective, just look at these numbers. We're talking about a project that makes other global mega projects look small. You know China's famous south-to-north water transfer project? It's huge, right? Well, the NRLP is designed to move almost 3 times more water. And get this, if this thing ever gets fully built, it will include 9 of the 10 largest canals on the entire planet. The scale is it's staggering. Right, so that's the grand vision. But what's the catch? Well, here we get to the ecological price tag. Because when you start messing with the arteries of a subcontinent like this, there's going to be a massive and maybe irreversible cost. You change a river's flow, and you literally change everything that river touches. Okay, so one of the first and biggest problems is something you might not even think about: sediment. All that silt and sand that rivers naturally carry downstream. The dams needed for this project, they're going to act like giant sediment traps. And look at this chart. We're talking about starving the deltas of major rivers, the Godavari, the Krishna, of up to 99% of their sediment. That's practically all of it.
And you really have to get this, that sediment isn't just dirt. It's literally the lifeblood of a river delta. It's what builds new land, what makes the soil so fertile, and it's the only thing that physically holds the coastline together against the sea. So when you stop that flow, you're essentially sentencing these huge populated regions to just sink and wash away. The homes, the farms, millions of people, potentially swallowed by the ocean. And believe me, it doesn't stop there. The impacts just cascade. You're talking about redrawing the water map for over half of India. You get this thing called hungry water downstream of the dams, water with no sediment in it that just starts eating away at the riverbanks. The natural floods that people have built their lives around for thousands of years, gone. It would throw entire ecosystems, everything from fish to birds, into complete chaos.
So we've talked about the ecology. Now let's talk about people, the human cost. Because when you undertake a project this huge, you're not just moving water, you're moving people, millions of them, and disrupting the lives of millions more.
And here's a really crucial, kind of heartbreaking point. Who actually gets counted as being affected by the project? The official definitions are often super narrow. They pretty much only count people who have a piece of paper that says they own the land. But what about everyone else? The landless farm workers, the fishermen, the boatmen, the small shopkeepers whose entire world revolves around that river. They own nothing on paper, so they're basically invisible.
And this quote really just hits the nail on the head. It says, displacement disrupts lives, alienates rights, and reduces quality of life. This isn't just about money or losing a house. It's about shattering communities, culture, your whole sense of who you are. For these people, it's losing a way of life, and no amount of cash can ever really make up for that.
And then there's this, another hidden danger you might not think of: public health. When you build these artificial links between rivers that were never connected, you're not just moving water, you're creating superhighways for pollution. The fear is that you could take all the nasty stuff from a heavily polluted river, say the Ganga, and pipe it directly into a much cleaner river like the Godavari. You'd basically be spreading contamination and disease across the entire country.
Okay, so you might be thinking, these are all just risks, right? Things that could happen. Well, now we get to the part where theory becomes terrifyingly real. Let's look at a crack that's already appeared in the system.
So let's talk about the Bargee Dam. In late 2025, reports started surfacing about massive leaks at this dam, a really key piece of the existing river system. It got so bad that the National Dam Safety Authority had to step in, and what they found led them to issue a formal notice, basically calling out some incredibly serious safety problems.
And the official notice, the wording was just chilling. It said the dam's operation, and I'm quoting here, poses a potential threat to public safety and the downstream population. A threat to people's lives. And that begs a really, really scary question, doesn't it? If we can't even get the existing pieces right, how on earth can we trust a system that's going to be exponentially bigger and more complex?
Which brings us to a major pivot point. After looking at all these risks, ecological, human, structural, you have to ask, are we even thinking about this problem the right way? Is physically moving all this water the only answer? What if there's a smarter way?
So, let's talk about a really cool concept called virtual water. It's basically the hidden water inside all the stuff we grow and trade. Think about it. When a country imports a ton of wheat, it's not just getting the grain. It's also importing the 1,300 cubic meters of water it took to grow that wheat. So when you trade food, you're actually trading water. Now, here's where it gets truly wild. You'd think that the parts of India with lots of water would grow the thirsty crops, right? And then sell them to the dry parts? Well, what's actually happening is often the complete opposite. You have water-scarce states draining their last drops of groundwater to grow things like rice and sugarcane. And then they export those crops to states that have plenty of water. It's a paradox that's actively making their own water problems worse. So why on earth is this happening? It makes absolutely no sense from a water perspective. But the thing is, it's not being driven by water logic at all. It's all about economics. Government subsidies, guaranteed markets, old farming habits, those are the things that decide what gets grown where. Water availability, it's not even part of the equation. So this all points to a completely different kind of solution. Instead of this massive hardware fix of building canals and dams, what about a software fix? We're talking about reforming policies to make the virtual water trade make sense. And you could combine that with smaller, local, proven ideas, like harvesting rainwater, recharging aquifers, and just using the water we have more efficiently. It's about reducing demand, not just rerouting supply. And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Is the real solution to water scarcity found in miles of concrete and massive canals? Or is it found in the choices we make about the food we grow and the way we trade? It's a choice between a huge, risky engineering project and a more nimble approach using policy and nature. And that's something to really think about.